Today on the Wrestling Roundtable, we talk about UFC's heavyweight division and we pick three from the big three in professional wrestling. Welcome back to the Wrestling Roundtable. Joining our panel here today is Jason Aletto to my left, which is your right. He's been a fan of 23 years, and he's also a Jersey Shore amusement manager. To my right, which is your left, Rodney LeConte, fan of 21 years and director of the Grappling Kings. Chris Harris, fan of 18 years and an audio-video technician. I'm the host, Eric Santamaria. Been working in pro wrestling over 5 years, and I want to remind you to pick up the Pro Wrestling Respect DVD. Pro Wrestling Respect won inaugural back in January at Burlington, New Jersey. DVD packed with extras, and you can also download it at Go Fight Live. Now, we wanted to start off talking about the heavyweight division in UFC, moving on to mixed martial arts for a little bit. We'll get back to pro wrestling later on. But I wanted to talk about the heavyweight division at UFC because right now it is stacked. A lot of stuff going on. Years ago, in the days of Tim Sylvia and thereabouts, it was pretty dire until they started bringing in names like Nogueira and Lesnar, and they've really spiced up the undercard of the heavyweight division now, and it's to the point where we don't even know who should be in line for a world title shot. But one of those people might be Roy Nelson. He's come in as a former IFL heavyweight champion, had some pretty impressive wins. Do you think Roy Nelson should be in the title picture, or does he need one or two more victories?
One or two more victories. You can't really base it on what he did back in the IFL because UFC is a different level of competition. Yes, he won the Ultimate Fighter. Yes, he beat Stefan Struve in dominant fashion. But there are just so many guys in the UFC heavyweight division that are really in that upper tier above Roy Nelson. And he really needs to prove that he can hang with the big boys in the big league.
But he has had some pretty impressive and fast first-round knockouts in his first few fights, much like the Velasquez's and the Carwins. Do you think that it might be some prejudice still left over because of his body type?
It most likely. The guy's not the shining example of an athlete that you usually have in your mind.
He's like Tank Abbott with talent.
Yeah, he still needs one name because, you can make, Brock only had one win. Brock beat Heath Herring, who was a pretty big name at the time. If he can beat Czech Congo, there's a very good chance he could be the next in line.
I don't think so.
I agree with both you guys, but I also think he needs to get through Dos Santos or Cain Velasquez, maybe even both, to get a title shot. And I think those two should fight each other. But Roy Nelson, he proved that in the Ultimate Fighter that he could be dominant. I think everybody who watched that show knew he was going to win it when they first saw him. I did, although he doesn't look too menacing with his physique and everything, but he's a great fighter, and he'll get a title shot eventually. I'm confident with that.
Yeah, he's a great fighter. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He hasn't submitted anyone since he's been a black belt. But of course, the more experienced guys could be more dominant over less experienced fighters, because that Ultimate Fighter is basically less experienced fighters rising up in the ranks.
Right.
And Roy Nelson, I think, had a great advantage coming into the house, and he pretty much proved that he was going to win.
Speaking of Czech Congo, the last time Congo fought was against Paul Buentello, who just got released from UFC after 2 losses in a row. Do you guys agree with that? Because I don't.
I don't either. I think one more. A name like that deserves one more shot. Yeah, he didn't look impressive. He did show guts and a lot of balls, fighting with a broken finger, I think it was.
Yep.
And I think that should have at least been considered in releasing him.
I agree with Rod. He should have gotten one more chance. But
Yeah.
he can always come back, though. That's the thing that what people don't realize is these guys can come back. You have a couple good fights somewhere else.
I'd go with one more chance for Buentello too. I agree with you guys. But how far can they go with another guy who doesn't have an impressive physique? And they're trying to get young guys in that division. He's been around the block a few times. And we'll see if he comes back. I think he could do some damage in other areas, but we'll see if he comes back.
That's why it's the heavyweight division. You're not going to get old guys that look like GSP.
Oh,
you
no
can
way,
get big guys. People like to see heavyweights, no matter what their physique looks like.
I think the headhunter at this point is one of those guys where people look like he's not going to get over that hump of getting that big victory and get to the next level. However, the reason I say after 2 straight losses, I think he should have been given another chance is not only showing the guts fighting through that finger injury, but the fight with Stefan Struve. That was a great bang-out fight in January, I believe it was, and the crowd was up for that. They were totally into it, and it could have gone either way. I think that was an impressive performance that should have justified him getting one more shot. But we mentioned Brock Lesnar before, an outside athlete coming in, and one of the latest is James Toney. former boxer who boxed at middleweight, and all of a sudden he's a heavyweight. He fluctuated between, I think, 219 and 247. A lot of weight difference there. A lot of people question why. But as I mentioned on the radio show with Anderson Silva, and he wants to box Roy Jones Jr., they won't let him do that. Much like Kurt Angle can't fight in UFC and wrestle at the same time, Anderson Silva can't fight in UFC and box at the same time. However, James Toney's contract is different. He is allowed to box. So do you think that means that James Toney is being set up to be made an example of, or do you think he can pull off what Herschel Walker did and be a big crossover name?
I think it's more for the crossover appeal because unlike Herschel Walker, here's a legit boxer, all right? He's very dangerous with his hands, all right? And we all know that wrestlers and all other crossovers alike, one thing they want to do is improve their stand-up because everyone likes to see the stand-up game. But here's a guy who can be a legitimate threat to the other heavyweights. He has the background. I think he's really dangerous, and he's going to pull off something that UFC won't expect.
I think he either sinks or swims on his first fight. I mean, they're going to put him in there with somebody who's a challenge. You were saying Randy Couture earlier.
Yes.
That's rumored. That's possible.
118.
Yeah.
And Couture, the wrestler, you know the way to beat boxers is always take them off their feet.
It's to wrestle him, yeah. If he gets put in there with a guy not up to the standard of Randy Couture, maybe an up-and-comer, I think he's got a better chance than against Randy Couture.
Yeah, we'll see what kind of shape he shows up in, too.
If it's Couture, this is a dangerous fight for him to take. If not, he can knock somebody out very easily.
I think just about anybody, almost any heavyweights could be very cautious of his hands.
Well, speaking of Couture, the rumor was that he was going to drop to light heavyweight for his next fight. I don't know if that's going to be the case. No one's really certain what weight class James Toney's going to fight at, although it looks like it will probably be heavyweight with some of these possibilities. But another name, speaking of light heavyweight, I wanted to bring up was someone who just won their last fight, and people were wondering if he even would. Mirko Cro Cop. Do you think he can be a factor in the heavyweight division at all anymore at this age or in this point in his career? Do you think he should drop to light heavyweight too?
I don't think dropping to light heavyweight is really going to help Mirko. He's not going to be in the top tier of heavyweights with Lesnar and Carwin and even Mir. But I still think that he could beat the majority of the heavyweights. He's just not going to be as dominant as he was in Pride. Now with the competition now, the heavyweight division is too good.
This is not the same Cro Cop we saw in Pride. It's going to be very difficult for him to claw his way to the top of the rankings. Everybody thought it would happen when he came in, but Gonzaga, with that kick.
Well, that's why I asked if he should drop to light heavyweight.
Maybe he should, but light heavyweight's pretty competitive too. You have so many guys down there. What would be the point?
I think he should drop down to light heavyweight, and I'll tell you why. He's fought a lot of those guys, Shogun, for instance, and Pride, a couple others, in the past. He can hang with those guys. I mean, you add Cro Cop to a card, any UFC pay-per-view, and he adds name value. People might be more enticed to buy the pay-per-view if he's on the card. Dropping to light heavyweight might be something that he should consider, and Dana White should consider, just to kind of spark his career again. Maybe he'll get a big kick knockout at a lightweight division fight.
Well, you mentioned Frank Mir, and that's a name I wanted to bring up in the context or parallel of Minotauro Nogueira. Do you think it's time for those two to have a rematch? And the reason I asked that is both of them were coming off big losses. In Nogueira's case, to Frank Mir, the first guy to finish him, coming off that staph infection, didn't look 100%, and then Frank Mir got trounced by Lesnar. However, Nogueira came back and had that classic with Couture last year, and then Mir came back with that stunning upset with Congo, where he looked really good. However, Mir lost to Carwin in pretty bad fashion, and Nogueira also got trounced by Velasquez. It seems like they go up and down, like they come close to coming back to form, and then they have a big loss. I think now's the time for those two to have a rematch that I think has been called for, to see if Frank Mir can hang with Nogueira at 100% this time and see if that can be a match they could springboard back into the title scene. What do you think?
I wouldn't be against that match. I would rather see Frank Mir take on maybe another up-and-comer because I think both of them right now are at that spot where if you could get past them, then you're in line for a title shot. They're really above, I guess, most of the heavyweight division. But yeah, I'd like to see 100% Nogueira up against Mir and see how that would play out.
Why not? It was a good fight the first time. Things could go differently this time.
I like the idea too. I figure both guys took devastating losses, and if they can bounce back from that and put on a great fight against each other, maybe even better than the first fight, then it could be great for both of their careers.
We've mentioned a lot of names so far in the title scene. There isn't a ranking system, so it's kind of just hearsay. But of course, there's Velasquez, Junior Dos Santos. We've mentioned other names. Do you think now's the time for Zuffa to install a ranking system so there's not so much debate that's pretty straight up. We know you're going to earn this slot if you get this victory, not on the whim of the promoter?
Yeah, right now it's pretty much unofficial, their ranking system, based on other websites and forums and magazines.
Who's going to sell?
Exactly. And really, it's wins and marketability of the fight. I think that's why they haven't done something like that.
They should put it in. I don't think they will. Dana White likes to be playing with his toys in the back, his dream fights with his action figures.
They don't want to be tied into anything. Mm-hmm. They don't want to have somebody ranked at number 2 and realize, wow, this guy's not marketable. Mm-hmm. This is
what
not
if also
a guy.
somebody, if somebody bails also?
Right, yeah, you never know.
Contracts, injuries, it could become a whole mess.
So that makes something where people could backlash because they're tied into it if you have a number 1 contender and he's ready for a title shot, but it's not going to happen because it's not marketable or something happens like an injury, like you said.
Because the number 2 can stay at number 2 for a long time, but the promotion not wanting to give them a title shot. John Fitch is a good example. I think he's a strong number 2. Zuffa just hasn't really given them a title shot because no one's really interested in it.
Right. Well, we're going to push up to segment number 2 because we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the unification fight between Lesnar and Carwin.
High kick. Oh, and he's out.
That's it. What's keeping him out?
Watch all of your favorite fighting events live on GoFightLive.tv.
That was a good one, Eric.
Lesnar and I didn't even ask the Kimbo Slice question, but oh well.
He's going to drop down.
You know what's weird? Like in the video game, they actually have a ranking system.
They do, yeah.
Yeah, kind of like in the video game, they have shows in MSG.
Yeah. They do?
You never played the game?
No.
Yeah, you can play in the garden.
Yeah. Wow.
They went so far as getting the logo. It's on the cage, and I didn't know it until I played through the heavyweight division, and when I got the title shot, finally it was in MSG, and I didn't know until Michael Buffer, Bruce Buffer said, "We are live from Madison Square." It's like, what? Yeah. Really?
Oh,
cool.
Man.
You know they want it.
Lesnar Carwin, we are scared.
Didn't we do this already?
We did it in November. I think when it was October, November, before it was supposed to happen.
Mm-hmm. Now we've seen more of Shane Carwin.
Yeah. I think there's a lot more questions to ask now.
3 minutes.
Yeah, 3 more minutes. Doubling what we've seen in the past.
All right, the first question I'll ask is if Lesnar can stand with Carwin. Welcome back to the Wrestling Roundtable. Thank you for watching us on YouTube, iTunes, or Go Fight Live. Well, if you're on iTunes, you'll be listening to us. Go Fight Live, we have the entire show. YouTube, we're broken up into segments. Any way you're watching us, thank you for watching, and please remember to subscribe, share, and rate. Let's get our numbers up. Moving on to the top of the UFC heavyweight division, Brock Lesnar once again is in a unification situation, this time against interim champion Shane Carwin. We talked about this last season when it was originally supposed to happen before Brock Lesnar had his illness, the intestine problem that kept him out for most of the past year. It's been about a year by the time it happens in July, on July 3rd, UFC 116. Lots of questions going into this fight. Let's start off with, do you think that Brock Lesnar can stand with Shane Carwin, who has looked very scary in the past couple fights?
Can he stand with them? Yeah. Should he? No.
Yeah?
I don't think so. It wouldn't be smart. I wouldn't advise it. He can try it out if he would like to. The stand-up is really the weaker part of Brock's game. He's really more of like the dominant ground and pound guy. I wouldn't advise it, and hopefully his camp doesn't.
Gotta take him to the mat. I would not want to see him try and go punch for punch with him.
Yeah, he has to ground him. He really does. He has to try it immediately, and he has to try. If he doesn't get it the first time, he has to try it again. He has to keep trying it. I don't think standing up with Carwin would be smart at all.
I agree, but let's also keep in mind that people say that Lesnar's striking is his weak suit, but he's also knocked down Frank Mir and Herring pretty easily. And he knocked out
Couture.
Right. Now, taking it to the mat, that's a curious situation because both guys are former NCAA wrestlers. Wrestling is their base. So obviously you would think the mat is where they want to go, but we don't, unless I'm missing something, we don't know what Carwin's ground game is because he's been standing and knocking people out with pretty much straight up boxing in his fights. He's knocked people the fuck out in the first couple rounds.
All of his opponents, all
Right.
12 of them.
So I don't know about you, but I don't know how his ground game is. Brock Lesnar may be at least a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, if not more, and he's won his fights on the ground, but he's not exactly a GSP on the ground either. So it's kind of an X factor. What do you think's going to happen if he listens to your advice and takes it to the ground?
He just has to learn how to control him. We saw a little bit of Carwin on the ground when he fought Gonzaga, and Gonzaga took him down, but he got right back up. If the same thing happens with Lesnar, Lesnar really needs to know how to keep his distance, take him to the ground, and control him, and just try to break Carwin down into segments and pick him apart piece by piece.
What do you think happens on the ground, Chris?
I really hope Brock just uses the weight advantage and just mount him and ground and pound. That's what I want to see, but this guy is scary.
How much of a weight advantage will he have, though? Because Mir weighed in at 265 at the last fight. That's what Brock weighed in his last fight, and Carwin destroyed Mir. Not just that, these are the two guys that have had the 3 size gloves in UFC history, so that it seems they're on pretty even levels, not just in their credentials, maybe not in their stand-up, but so far it's a pretty even matchup.
This could be the most unpredictable heavyweight title fight we've ever seen because Brock Lesnar has been fighting since July, and it could be tough for him to take Shane Carwin down, who's been consistently fighting and consistently staying in shape for fights. Even when he was going to fight Brock, he kept training because then they signed the fight with Frank Mir, and he kept going. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Brock does in general.
After UFC 111, I think when they had that stare down, you saw the size difference between Lesnar and Carwin. And I think that is going to definitely play a part. What I'm thinking is the year off might hurt Lesnar. I mean, yeah, he's been back training, but having the year off, I mean, it didn't affect Carwin, but who knows, a more inexperienced Lesnar, how that would affect him.
That's what I was going to ask next, because a lot of Lesnar fans have been saying if he was fighting at less than 100% with a hole in his intestines before and dominating these guys, imagine what he's going to be like now. The question is, with a different diet and probably different training and a year off, do you expect Lesnar to be at least as good as he was before or better?
Yeah, I think so. He's on that learning curve where he just takes everything in. He's going to come up with a smart game plan.
I agree with Rod. I think he's going to come out looking better than we've seen him. We don't know what he's going to look like. A year off could make a huge difference.
I agree. He'll be in tip-top shape, I'm sure. He really needs to form a game plan and stick to it. Watch Frank Mir, the second fight. He wanted to stand with Frank Mir when taking him down was a smart thing to do. This time, he's got to stick to the game plan, and he can't stray from it too much, in my opinion.
All right, then. Let's make our predictions and our picks. Who do you think wins and how and when?
Brock Lesnar in the third round.
Third
round. I don't think it's going to be so much back and forth. I think he's just going to take him down. He's going to control Carwin on the ground, pound him, and knock him out in the third round.
I think I've always been wrong. I think I brought it up last time. So
We're always wrong. Anytime we make predictions, it's always different.
I'm sticking with Carwin because that's who I want to see lose. So I'm going to say he wins because we're always wrong.
I say Brock Lesnar second round via stoppage. I think he's going to be able to take him down and ground and pound him, and I think he's going to overwhelm him with the strikes. When he positioned Frank Mir against the fence, he kind of took his time and was strategic with it. I think this time he's going to go pretty crazy and just kind of flail out on him and knock him out.
I agree. It may not be realistic, because realistic would probably be Carwin first round knockout. But
hopefully not.
I'm hoping second round ref stoppage by Lesnar. I think they should take him down like you guys were saying, and he probably can ground and pound him from there because, like I said, we don't know what Carwin's ground game is like. Moving on beyond this fight, though, there's a lot of guys in contention. We have Velasquez. I think Junior Dos Santos should be up there as well. Do you think maybe it should be Velasquez and Dos Santos to determine who gets the shot against the winner of this fight? Or do you think it's just Velasquez gets the winner?
Velasquez gets the winner because I really don't think that you should knock out two up-and-coming contenders by having Dos Santos and Velasquez.
The O must go.
The O must go. But I think everyone pretty much wants to see both these guys get a title shot. Maybe give Dos Santos another match before he's ready for the winner of Velasquez against whoever wins Lesnar Carwin.
They should do the match, but also Velasquez got screwed because he was supposed to fight Carwin for the #1 contendership, so I think he should get it automatically next.
I'd really just like to see Dos Santos and Velasquez fight. So I'm just going to go with my heart and say, yeah, let's have those guys go at it and see what happens.
That could even be a good undercard match for the 116 unification fight. That way, you also have someone to get in the cage with whoever is the winner and get your stare down to sell the pay-per-view. So that's probably what I would go with. But moving on, we're going to move on to fantasy booking. We're going to pick 3 from the big 3 of pro wrestling when we come back.
With Lesnar's chin, man, Lesnar's chin has been tested. Everyone knows that
Really?
against Couture.
Couture, yeah, he rocked him pretty good.
Couture is not Carwin.
Still,
Alright,
it
man,
doesn't
Frank
matter.
Graham tested it, but Brock took a good shot against Mir.
Hopefully, Carwin hasn't used his wrestling in so long he forgot how to use it.
I don't think Lesnar's ever taken a real big shot in any of his fights.
I didn't know. He took
got
a huge
rocked.
knee
Yeah.
against,
Right,
100.
He went right, yeah.
I don't think it's going to be anything that compares to an uppercut from Carwin.
Brock's hands aren't exactly, little pieces
Maybe
of
he's
potato
working on
either.
it, though,
What was that?
Maybe Brock's been working on his hands constantly, just knowing,
Oh, yeah, I mean,
knowing that Carl was going to want to
yeah, it's got a
He's
year
been in his
off.
hospital bed
So, me and Eric are second segment?
That's right.
The main events of the evening!
Introducing first, fighting! He represents running athletics in New York.
If I do an amateur fight, I want to have it so that,
I
I hit the guy and then just run around the cage and everyone chase me, looking for a way out.
Do a moonsault off the cage.
I wish I was in UFC where, when if we're on the ground, the camera's close up, every time it hits me, I'm like, ow, ow, ow.
He slaps you. Woo!
This is what I did last night, Eric. I mounted her and then I finished her.
A little ground and pound.
Pounded her in a submission.
I tapped out. I tapped her.
We should do that next time we do commentary. Let's do sex jokes the whole time.
Like that guy's theme music. Whatever the fuck it was.